The silver ships appeared without warning above New Denver Colony. Their hulls gleamed like mirrors in the morning sun, casting strange shadows across the farming settlements below. Commander Vexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive world through the viewing screen. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he studied the small human structures scattered across the planet's surface. "Another backward species," he said to his second-in-command. "They don't even have proper energy shields around their settlements." The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 847 different species across 3 arms of the galaxy. Each time, the pattern remained the same. The Empire would arrive, demand surrender, and the aliens would bow down within hours. Some species tried to fight back, but none lasted more than a few days against Imperial Technology. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UEC Defiant, humanity's patrol ship in this sector. The alien vessels had appeared on his sensors an hour ago. 20 massive warships, each one 3 times larger than his own ship. His crew of 42 humans worked quietly at their stations, preparing for whatever came next. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "Put it through," Jake replied. The viewing screen flickered and showed Commander Vexthara. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 golden eyes. His uniform displayed symbols that meant nothing to human eyes, but his bearing suggested high military rank. "I am Commander Vexthara of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien began. "Your species is now part of our territory. You will surrender all military vessels immediately and prepare for Imperial occupation. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your colonies." Jake studied the alien commander for a moment. He had trained for this situation, though he hoped it would never come. First contact with a hostile alien species. His orders were clear. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Systems," he replied calmly. "You have entered human space without permission. I'm asking you to withdraw your vessels within 72 hours. We don't want conflict, but we will defend our territory." Commander Vexthara's 4 eyes widened in surprise. In his long military career, no species had ever made demands of the Empire. They begged, they pleaded, they offered tribute, but they never issued ultimatums. "You misunderstand your situation, human," Vexthara said. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but 72 hours is still 72 hours. Your choice." The transmission ended. On the Imperial flagship, Vexthara turned to his officers. Several of them were laughing at the human's response. "Shall we destroy their ship now, Commander?" asked his weapons officer. "Not yet," Vexthara replied. "Let's see how these humans react when we demonstrate our power. Begin bombardment of their largest settlement." The U's Defiant was no match for 20 Imperial warships. Jake knew this, and so did his crew. But orders were orders, and humans had their own way of handling impossible situations. "All stations battle alert," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to buy the colonists time to evacuate." The Defiant moved between the alien fleet and New Denver Colony. Jake's ship fired its missiles and energy weapons at the nearest Imperial vessel. The weapons struck the alien ship's shields, but caused no visible damage. "Their shields are holding," reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Chris Taylor. "Keep firing," Jake ordered. "Make them work for it." Down on New Denver Colony, the evacuation had begun. But these weren't ordinary civilians. The colonists were. Mostly farmers, miners, and their families, but every human settlement maintained a defense militia. Within minutes of the first alarm, ordinary citizens were grabbing weapons and moving to defensive positions. Mayor Lisa Rodriguez stood in the colony's command center. coordinating the evacuation and defense efforts. She had been a military officer. Before becoming a civilian leader, and old habits died hard. "Get the children to the underground shelters," she ordered her staff. "Everyone else, defensive positions. We make them pay for every meter." The Imperial bombardment began 10 minutes later. Energy beams struck the colony's buildings, turning metal and concrete into vapor. But the humans didn't run screaming like most species would. Instead, they fired back with everything they had. Mining equipment became improvised weapons. Agricultural vehicles were converted into mobile gun platforms. Civilian spacecraft tried to ram the Imperial ships. The humans fought like cornered animals, using tactics the Empire had never encountered. Commander Vexthara watched the battle from his flagship bridge. His forces were winning, of course, but something felt wrong. The humans weren't behaving like other conquered species. "Commander, we're taking casualties," reported his tactical officer. "Impossible," Vexthara replied. "Their weapons are primitive." "Yes, sir, but they're using suicide attacks. 3 of their civilian ships have rammed our vessels. Our shields stopped them, but the impacts damaged our sensor arrays." On the planet's surface, the battle continued. Mayor Rodriguez led a group of colonists in a desperate attack on an Imperial landing craft. They had hunting rifles and mining explosives against alien soldiers with energy weapons and powered armor. The humans knew they would lose, but they fought anyway. "For humanity," Rodriguez shouted as she triggered the mining charges she had strapped to herself. The explosion destroyed the landing craft and took 12 Imperial soldiers with her. Similar scenes played out across the colony. Humans refused to surrender, even when facing certain death. They used guerrilla tactics, improvised weapons, and sheer determination to make the Imperial forces pay for every victory. The U.E. fought until the end. Jake's ship was heavily damaged, its weapon systems failing, its shields down to nothing. But still the crew kept fighting. "Sir, we've lost main power," Lieutenant Foster reported. "Life support is failing." "Then we do this the old way," Jake replied. He turned his ship toward the nearest Imperial vessel and pushed the engines to maximum power. Commander Vexthara watched in disbelief as the human ship accelerated toward his flagship on a collision course. At the last second, his shield stopped the impact, but the explosion damaged his ship's hull. The battle for New Denver Colony lasted 6 hours. In the end, the Imperial forces won completely. Every human defender was dead. The colony lay in ruins, but the victory had cost the Zephyrians more casualties than they had suffered in their last 10 conquests combined. As the Imperial fleet prepared to leave, a single transmission reached them from the planet's surface. It came from an automated beacon, programmed to activate after the colony's destruction. The message contained only one word, spoken in a calm human voice: "Flee." Commander Vexthara stared at the communication display. The word echoed in his mind as his fleet departed the dead world. He had won the battle, but for the first time in his career, victory felt like a warning. High Admiral Kethmer sat in his ornate chair within the Grand War Chamber of the Imperial capital world Zexnara. The massive room stretched for hundreds of meters, its crystal walls displaying star maps of the Empire's vast territory. Red dots marked conquered worlds, and there were thousands of them spread across 3 galactic arms. Commander Vexthara stood before the War Council, delivering his report on the human encounter. The other admirals and generals listened with mild interest as he described the battle at New Denver Colony. "The humans fought more fiercely than expected," Vexthara explained. "They used suicide tactics and refused to surrender even when facing certain death. We lost 47 soldiers and suffered damage to 6 vessels." Several council members exchanged glances. General Kexnol, veteran of 300 conquest campaigns, spoke first. 47 casualties against primitives? He asked with amusement. Commander, the Altarian resistance killed 200 of our soldiers before surrendering. The Vegan Empire destroyed 12 of our ships in their final battle. These humans sound typical. High Admiral Kethmer nodded in agreement. He had seen this pattern many times before. Some species fought harder than others when facing extinction, but they all fell eventually. The Empire's technology and numbers always won in the end. What are their military capabilities? Asked Admiral Zex Prima, the Empire's intelligence chief. Primitive kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and basic energy systems, Vexthara replied. Their largest warship was no match for a single Imperial cruiser. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no gravitic technology. Sounds like the Turvan Republic before we conquered them, commented General Kexnul. They also used suicide attacks and guerrilla tactics. We crushed them in 2 months. High Admiral Kethmer stood and walked to the central star map. He touched a control panel, and human space appeared as a small cluster of yellow dots on the display. Compared to the Empire's red territory, it looked insignificant. How many worlds do they control? He asked. Our intelligence estimates 43 planets with significant populations, Vexthara answered. Perhaps 200 smaller colonies and outposts. 200 worlds, Kethmer mused. The Empire controls over 50,000 planets. These humans are nothing more than a minor pest. The council members murmured agreement. They had faced larger civilizations before and crushed them all. The human territory was barely visible on the galactic map. Still, Admiral Zex Prima said thoughtfully, their resistance was unusually determined. Perhaps we should send a larger force to ensure quick victory. Agreed, Kethner replied. I want this human problem solved quickly and completely. We cannot allow word to spread that any species successfully resisted the Empire, even briefly. He turned to address the full council. I will personally lead Battle Group Omega against the humans. 200 ships, including our newest dreadnoughts. We will demonstrate Imperial might by capturing 10 human worlds simultaneously. Battle Group Omega was the Empire's most feared fleet. It had never suffered defeat in over 3 centuries. Of warfare, the sight of 200 Imperial warships arriving in a system usually caused immediate surrender. The humans will see our fleet and lose all hope, Kethmer continued. When 10 of their worlds fall in a single day, the rest will surrender without further resistance. General Kexnul stood and saluted. A wise strategy, High Admiral. Overwhelming force prevents prolonged conflict. Exactly, Kethmer replied. We end this quickly and move on to more important conquests. Over the following days, Battle Group Omega assembled in the Zexnara system. The massive fleet included 40 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet's surface. 100 cruisers provided heavy firepower, while 60 destroyers handled escort duties. Imperial citizens gathered to watch the fleet's departure. News networks covered the event with excitement, already preparing victory documentaries. Children waved flags bearing the Imperial symbol as the great ships moved through space. Another glorious conquest begins, announced the primary news broadcaster. High Admiral Kethmer leads our invincible fleet against the primitive humans. Victory is assured. The Empire's confidence was absolute. They had conquered species with better technology, larger populations, and more advanced military tactics. The humans appeared to be just another minor obstacle dot in the Imperial Intelligence Center. Analysts studied all available data about human capabilities. Most dismissed the reports as exaggerated. Humans used solid projectile weapons instead of energy beams. They relied on chemical explosives rather than antimatter warheads. Their ships lacked proper shielding systems. "These humans are centuries behind our technology," reported Chief Analyst Mexler. "Their most advanced weapons are equivalent to what the Empire used 1,000 years ago." But in a small office deep within the intelligence complex, Senior Analyst Kixandra reviewed the same data with growing concern. She had spent decades studying conquered species, looking for patterns that might help the Empire achieve faster victories. Something about the human data troubled her. The battle reports from New Denver showed unusual tactical decisions. The humans had not tried to preserve their forces or negotiate terms. Instead, they had chosen maximum damage over survival. "Interesting," she murmured, reviewing the footage of human colonists ramming civilian ships into Imperial vessels. Most species try to minimize casualties. These humans seem to maximize them. She pulled up psychological profiles of other conquered races. The Altarians had fought bravely, but still sought to preserve their civilization. The Vegan Empire had tried to negotiate, even while fighting. The Corvan Federation had attempted to retreat and regroup. The humans at New Denver had done none of these things. They had fought until every last defender was dead, never asking for mercy or offering surrender. Kixandra began writing a detailed analysis of human psychological patterns, but she knew no one would read it. The War Council had already decided that humans were just another primitive species. Her warnings would be ignored until after the conquest was complete. Meanwhile, High Admiral Kefmer reviewed star charts of human space from his flagship bridge. The journey to human territory would take 2 weeks. He planned to strike simultaneously at 10 different worlds, demonstrating the Empire's ability to attack multiple targets with overwhelming force. "The humans will panic when they see our fleet," he told his staff officers. "They will realize that resistance is futile." Captain Dexmar, his tactical advisor, nodded enthusiastically. "Sir, our intelligence suggests that humans have never faced a fleet larger than 50 ships. When they see 200 Imperial vessels, they will surrender immediately." "Good," Kefmer replied. "I want this campaign finished within 1 month. The Emperor expects quick results." The Imperial fleet jumped to hyperspace, beginning its journey toward human territory. Across the Empire, citizens celebrated the coming victory. Military academies used the campaign as a teaching example of proper, overwhelming force tactics. But deep in her small office, Analyst Kixandra continued studying human behavior patterns. The more she learned, the more worried she became. These humans were different from other species in ways that the Empire did not understand. The single word from New Denver echoed in her mind: flee. No other conquered species had ever sent such a message after losing a battle. Usually, they begged for mercy or promised cooperation. The humans had sent a warning instead. General Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of screens that showed activity across human space. The automated beacon from New Denver had triggered Protocol 736 hours ago, and humanity was transforming from a peaceful civilization into a war machine. "Status report," she ordered her staff. Colonel Ben Foster stepped forward with a data tablet. "All colonies have activated their defense protocols. Military production is up 400%. Civilian factories are converting to weapons manufacturing." Patricia nodded. Protocol 7 was humanity's total war mobilization plan, developed after decades of studying alien contact scenarios. Every human world knew exactly what to do when the alarm sounded. On Mars, the massive shipyards that normally built cargo vessels and passenger liners were now producing military craft. Factory workers who had been making farming equipment yesterday were assembling missile systems today. The transformation happened smoothly because humans had planned for this moment since they first left. Earth. Captain Lisa Chun piloted her stealth ship through the edge of Imperial space, studying the alien fleet that was heading toward human territory. Her small vessel was nearly invisible to most sensors, designed specifically for intelligence-gathering missions like this one. Recording all energy signatures, she reported to her crew of 6 specialists. Their ships are big, but they move in predictable formations. Through her ship's advanced telescopes, Lisa watched the Imperial fleet travel through hyperspace. 200 massive warships moving in perfect geometric patterns. Beautiful and terrifying, but also revealing. They fight like a parade, observed Lieutenant Danny Wright, her tactical officer. Everything in neat rows and precise spacing. That's good for us, Lisa replied. Predictable enemies are easier to kill. Her ship collected data on Imperial shield frequencies, weapon ranges, and communication patterns. This intelligence would help human forces prepare for the coming battle. Back on Earth, Dr. Richard Park examined pieces of wreckage recovered from New Denver. His laboratory had been studying alien technology for 18 hours straight, and the results were encouraging. Their shields operate on a narrow frequency band, he explained to General Hayes during a video conference. Our kinetic weapons actually penetrate better than expected. They've optimized their defenses against energy weapons, not solid projectiles. What about their armor? Patricia asked. Advanced, but brittle, Richard replied. It's designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons. Our explosive warheads cause much more structural damage than they're prepared for. This was typical human luck. While other species had developed energy-based weapons, humans had perfected kinetic and explosive systems. What the Empire saw as primitive technology was actually perfectly suited to exploit Imperial weaknesses. Admiral Susan Clark coordinated the largest military buildup in human history from her command ship orbiting Earth. Hidden weapons platforms throughout human space were coming online, revealing defensive systems that had been secretly built over decades. Activation complete on Platforms Alpha through Zulu, reported her communications officer. All hidden bases are operational. The platforms had been disguised as asteroid mining stations, scientific research posts, and commercial facilities. Now they revealed their true purpose. Massive weapons arrays designed to ambush attacking fleets that every human world was preparing for siege warfare. Food production shifted to emergency rations. Medical facilities prepared for massive casualties. Children as young as 12 began basic military training, just as their grandparents had done during Earth's last World War. But the most important preparation was psychological. Humans had been studying warfare for thousands of years. Every conflict in human history had taught them lessons about fighting superior enemies, surviving impossible odds, and winning through determination rather than technology. Captain Nike Rodriguez led a training exercise on the colony world of New Houston. His militia forces practiced guerrilla tactics, using the same strategies that had worked against larger armies throughout human history. Remember, he told his volunteers, we don't have to destroy all their ships. We just have to make them bleed enough that they decide we're not worth the cost. The volunteers included farmers, mechanics, teachers, and shopkeepers. Most had never been professional soldiers, but they learned quickly. Humans had an instinct for warfare that surprised even themselves. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Chung's intelligence mission continued. Her stealth ship had infiltrated deep into Imperial territory, gathering data on supply lines and communication networks. They're overconfident, she reported during her daily transmission to Luna Base. Their fleet moves without proper scouting. No advance reconnaissance. They expect us to surrender when we see them coming. Will we? Asked General Hayes with a slight smile. Not likely, Lisa replied. These aliens have never fought anyone who actually wanted to fight back. Dr. Richard Park made another important discovery while studying Imperial technology. The aliens used artificial intelligence systems to coordinate their fleet movements. But these systems had never adapted to truly chaotic warfare. Their computers are programmed to fight other organized military forces, he explained to Admiral Clark. They expect logical tactics, rational decisions, and predictable responses. Human warfare is none of those things. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to fight a superior enemy was to be completely unpredictable. Imperial war computers might be able to calculate optimal responses to standard military tactics, but they would struggle against human creativity, and apparent madness. The preparation continued around the clock. Weapons factories operated 24 hours a day. Training camps turned civilians into soldiers. Hidden military bases revealed stockpiles of equipment that had been secretly accumulated for decades. But perhaps the most important preparation was mental. Humans were getting angry. News of New Denver's destruction had spread throughout human space, and the response was not fear but rage. Colonel Ben Foster visited a volunteer training camp on Europa and found recruits who were eager to fight. These weren't professional soldiers driven by duty or patriotism. They were ordinary humans who had been told that aliens wanted to conquer their homes and families. "Sir," asked one recruit, a young woman who had been a school teacher the week before, "is it true that the aliens never accept surrender?" "That's what our intelligence suggests," Ben replied. "Good," she said with a cold smile. "Then we don't have to feel guilty about what we're going to do to them." Captain Lisa Chun completed her intelligence mission and began the journey home. Her ship's computers held detailed information about Imperial fleet movements, weapon capabilities, and tactical doctrines. But she had also observed something that couldn't be measured by sensors. The Imperial forces showed all the signs of an army that had never faced real opposition. They were powerful and well-equipped, but they moved with the casual confidence of bullies who had never been hurt. "They're in for a surprise," she told her crew as their ship jumped to hyperspace. "Humans don't just fight wars. We enjoy them." Back on Luna Base, General Patricia Hayes reviewed the final preparations. In 72 hours, Battle Group Omega would arrive at the edge of human space. 200 Imperial warships against humanity's scattered defensive forces. The odds were terrible. But Patricia had studied enough military history to know that odds didn't always determine outcomes. Sometimes the smaller force won simply because they wanted victory more than their enemies wanted to fight. "Let them come," she said quietly, watching the tactical displays. "We'll show them what humans do best." High Admiral Kethmer watched his fleet emerge from hyperspace at the edge of human territory. 200 Imperial warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. He expected the humans to see his fleet and immediately broadcast their surrender. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. The humans were already waiting for them. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer with confusion in his voice, "we're detecting multiple weapon signatures throughout this system. The humans have military installations that weren't in our intelligence reports." Kethmer studied the tactical display with growing concern. What had appeared to be empty space and harmless asteroids was revealing itself as a network of hidden weapons platforms. The humans had been preparing for this moment. "How many installations?" he asked. "Still counting, sir." "At least 50 major weapons platforms, plus an unknown number of smaller defensive positions," Captain Danny Wright commanded. The human forces at Kepler Station, one of 10 worlds that Battle Group Omega planned to attack simultaneously. His fleet consisted of 37 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with military weapons hastily installed. He watched the Imperial forces approach on his tactical screen. 20 ships heading directly for his position, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in his fleet. The smart tactical decision would be to retreat and preserve his forces for a more favorable battle. Danny had no intention of being smart. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered over the fleet communication channel. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to hurt them as badly as possible before they kill us." His ships accelerated toward the Imperial fleet at maximum speed. The human vessels moved in seemingly random patterns, making it difficult for the Imperial targeting systems to achieve clean locks. This was controlled chaos, the kind of tactic that human military academies had been perfecting for centuries. The first exchange of fire shocked the Imperial forces. Human missiles and kinetic projectiles slammed into Imperial shields with devastating effect. The aliens' defensive systems had been designed to stop energy weapons, not the solid projectiles and chemical explosives the humans preferred. "Impossible," shouted Commander Texvar from his Imperial cruiser as human warheads penetrated his shields and damaged his hull. "Their weapons are primitive." "Primitive, but effective," Danny replied over an open channel, his voice filled with grim satisfaction. "You should have stayed home." The Battle of Kepler Station became a masterclass in human military doctrine. Danny's ships used suicide runs, concentrated fire, and guerrilla tactics that the Imperial computers couldn't predict or counter. When his flagship took critical damage, he rammed it directly into an Imperial destroyer. "This is for New Denver," Danny transmitted as his ship's reactor went critical. The explosion destroyed both vessels and damaged 2 nearby Imperial cruisers. Similar battles erupted across 10 different star systems as Battle Group Omega discovered that conquering humans was nothing like conquering other species. At the colony world of New Montana, Admiral Lisa Rodriguez led a defense that turned mining equipment into weapons of war. "Use the asteroid tractors as weapons," she ordered her mixed fleet of military and civilian ships. "Grab rocks and throw them at the Imperial vessels." The tactic was crude, but effective. Imperial shields could stop energy beams and missiles, but they struggled against multi-ton asteroids hurled at high velocity. The aliens found themselves under bombardment for weaponized mining equipment. High Admiral Kethmer received battle reports from all 10 target systems, and each one told the same disturbing story. The humans were fighting with a viciousness that the Empire had never encountered. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender offers from 3 of the human worlds." Kethmer felt a moment of relief. Finally, the humans were showing sense. "What are their terms?" he asked. "They're not offering to surrender to us, sir. They're offering to accept our surrender." The Admiral stared at his officer in disbelief. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, losing every battle, and they were offering to accept Imperial surrender. It was either insanity or the ultimate expression of confidence. Captain Mike Chon led a squadron of human fighters in a desperate attack against an Imperial dreadnought near the colony of New Texas. His 12 small ships faced a vessel that could destroy planets, but the humans had studied Imperial designs and found a weakness. "Target the shield generators," he ordered his pilots. "All ships, maximum acceleration." "We're going in close." The human fighters dove toward the massive Imperial ship like attacking insects. Imperial defensive fire destroyed half of Mike's squadron, but the survivors reached their target. Small ships could maneuver close to the dreadnought's hull where its main weapons couldn't track them. "For humanity," Mike shouted as he detonated his ship's entire missile payload against the shield generator. The explosion created a gap in the Imperial defenses that other human ships immediately exploited. The dreadnought survived, but it had been damaged by fighters that should have been swatted aside like gnats. The psychological impact on the Imperial crew was devastating. Throughout the battle zone, Imperial soldiers began reporting something that their commanders found impossible to believe. The humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Combat recordings showed human pilots laughing during dogfights, ground troops singing while under bombardment, and ship captains making jokes over open communication channels. "They're insane," reported one Imperial captain. "They fight like they want to die." But the humans weren't suicidal. They were simply approaching warfare from a completely different perspective than any species the Empire had encountered. For humans, war wasn't just about victory or defeat. It was about proving something to themselves and their enemies. Colonel Amy Foster led a ground defense team on New Idaho when Imperial forces landed to secure the colony. Her militia fighters used tactics that the alien soldiers had never seen before. They attacked from hidden positions, used booby traps, and improvised explosives, and refused to engage in conventional battles. "Remember," she told her fighters over their tactical network, "we don't have to kill all of them. We just have to make them afraid to leave their landing zones." The Imperial ground forces found themselves trapped in a nightmare of guerrilla warfare. Human fighters appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the aliens could respond. Every building might contain snipers. Every street might hide explosives. After 6 hours of fighting, Admiral Kethmer realized that his forces had achieved their tactical objectives. All 10 human worlds were under Imperial control. The human fleets had been destroyed or scattered. By every military measure, Battle Group Omega had won a complete victory, but the cost had been horrifying. 63 Imperial ships had been destroyed or severely damaged. Over 4,000 Imperial soldiers were dead. The humans had inflicted more casualties on the Empire in one day than the previous 10 conquests combined, not worse. The humans hadn't surrendered. Even after losing their fleets and colonies, human resistance fighters continued attacking Imperial positions. They used civilian equipment as weapons, turned children into spies, and made every occupied world a battlefield. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer with barely controlled fear, "we're receiving a transmission from all 10 conquered worlds." "What do they say?" Kethmer asked. "Just one word, sir." "The same word from every world." The transmission played across the fleet's communication system. Thousands of human voices speaking in unison, their tone calm and confident despite their defeat. "Flee. High Admiral Kethmer returned to the Imperial capital with only 137 ships from his original fleet of 200. The docking bays of Zexnara had never seen such damaged vessels return from what should have been a routine conquest. Battle scars covered every hull, and the faces of surviving crew members showed something the Empire had never seen before: fear. Emperor Zexthul himself waited in the Grand War Chamber as Kethmer delivered his report. The massive room that had celebrated countless victories now felt cold and quiet as the Admiral described his encounters with human forces. "We achieved all tactical objectives, Your Majesty," Kethmer reported. 10 human worlds are under Imperial control. Their military fleets have been destroyed or scattered. "Then why do you look like you lost?" asked the Emperor, his voice sharp with concern. Kethmer hesitated before answering. "The humans didn't fight like any species we've encountered before. They used tactics that our computers couldn't predict. They seemed to prefer death over surrender." In her small office, Senior Analyst Kixandra finally had an audience for her research. The War Council that had ignored her warnings now demanded to understand how primitives had inflicted such heavy casualties on the Empire's finest fleet. "The humans approach warfare differently than other species," she explained to the assembled generals and admirals. "Most civilizations fight to preserve themselves. Humans fight to destroy their enemies, even at the cost of their own lives." General Kex Newell, who had dismissed human capabilities weeks earlier, now studied her data with growing alarm. "You're saying they prefer mutual destruction over defeat?" "Exactly," Kixandra replied. They view warfare as a test of will rather than a contest of technology. They measure victory by how much damage they inflict, not by how much they preserve. The implications were staggering. The Empire had built its expansion strategy on the assumption that conquered species would eventually accept imperial rule to preserve their civilizations. Humans appeared willing to destroy themselves rather than submit, but the worst news was yet to come. Captain Ben Foster, leading the first human offensive fleet, had crossed into Imperial space and begun attacking isolated outposts and supply convoys. His forces moved like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing before Imperial reinforcements could arrive. Status report from Sector 12 announced Admiral Zex Prima during an emergency council session. The humans have destroyed 3 supply depots and captured an Imperial communications facility. Emperor Zexthul studied the tactical displays with growing concern. Red markers showed human attack positions throughout the Empire's border regions. The primitives were no longer defending their territory. They were invading Imperial space. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence reported that their fleets were destroyed. They're using captured Imperial technology, Zex Prima replied. The humans are adapting our systems to their ships, faster than our engineers thought possible. Captain Ben Foster stood. On the bridge of his flagship, a human cruiser upgraded with Imperial shield generators and weapon systems salvaged from destroyed alien vessels. His fleet of 43 ships moved through Imperial space like a pack of wolves, hunting for targets of opportunity. Sir, we've located an Imperial patrol group, reported his tactical officer. 6 ships, including a heavy cruiser. Attack. Formation, Ben ordered. Remember, we're not here to hold territory. We're here to make them bleed. The human fleet struck the Imperial patrol with devastating precision. Ben's ships used coordinated attacks that the Imperial computers couldn't counter, focusing all their firepower on single targets until the enemy vessels were destroyed. Imperial vessel, this is Captain Foster of the United Earth Systems. Ben transmitted as the last alien ship exploded. Tell your friends we're coming for them next. Back on the Imperial capital, the War Council faced an unprecedented crisis. For the first time in the Empire's history, they were losing ships and territory to a species they had supposedly conquered. The psychological impact was devastating. The humans are operating deep within our territory, reported General Kexnul. They've destroyed 17 military installations and captured 4 minor worlds. Impossible, Emperor Zexthul replied. Our intelligence showed they had no fleet capable of offensive operations. They're building new ships faster than we can destroy them, Kixandra explained. Human industrial capacity is designed for rapid military production. They can replace losses and expand their forces simultaneously. The Emperor studied star charts that now showed human attack groups throughout Imperial border space. What had started as a simple conquest was becoming a full-scale war against an enemy that refused to stay defeated. Meanwhile, General Amy Rodriguez coordinated human defensive operations from her command center on Earth. The 10 conquered worlds continued their resistance, making Imperial occupation a nightmare of constant guerrilla warfare. Status report from the occupied territories, she announced during a briefing with human military leaders. Imperial forces are requesting reinforcements on all 10 worlds. They're losing more soldiers to resistance fighters than they did during the initial conquest. The humans on occupied worlds had transformed into something the Empire had never faced, a population that viewed Imperial soldiers as targets rather than conquerors. Every Imperial patrol faced sniper fire. Every Imperial facility faced sabotage. Every Imperial soldier faced the constant threat of attack. Captain Mike Rodriguez led a resistance cell on the occupied world of New Montana. His fighters used hit-and-run tactics that kept Imperial forces trapped in fortified positions, unable to control the territory they had supposedly conquered. "The aliens are scared to leave their bases," he reported to Earth. "They control the landing zones and nothing else. We own everything between their fortifications." Emperor Zexthul convened an emergency session of his highest advisors. The Empire faced a decision that had never been necessary in over a millennium of expansion: whether to continue fighting or withdraw from human space. The cost of conquering these humans exceeds any possible benefit, argued Admiral Zex Prima. They're destroying more Imperial resources than their territory is worth. But if we withdraw, countered General Kex Null, other species will learn that the Empire can be defeated. Our entire expansion strategy depends on the fear of Imperial power. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Empire had three choices: commit massive resources to a prolonged war against humans, accept ongoing losses to guerrilla warfare, or withdraw and admit defeat. Senior analyst Kixandra provided the final argument that convinced the Emperor. "Your Majesty, the humans are learning from every engagement. They're becoming more dangerous with each battle. If we continue this war, they may eventually pose a threat to the Empire itself." The withdrawal order went out 3 days later. Imperial forces began evacuating human space, abandoning the 10 conquered worlds and pulling back to defensive positions. It was the first retreat in Imperial history. As the alien fleets departed, every human world they passed broadcast the same message that had started the war. Thousands of human voices speaking the single word that had proven prophetic: flee. High Admiral Kethmer watched human space disappear from his tactical displays as his fleet completed its withdrawal. The Empire had learned a terrible lesson about the dangers of underestimating seemingly primitive opponents. The humans had proven that some species were better left alone. They had turned warfare itself into a weapon, using their willingness to fight and die as a tool of victory. The Empire would remember this lesson and avoid human space for generations to come. In the end, the Zephyrian Empire discovered that conquest was only possible when the conquered wanted to survive more than they wanted to fight.